Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stripping away all the internet wellness trends to look at the absolute, raw limits of human biology. We're diving into a deeply clinical world of shock, survival, and adaptation. We are going to examine what exactly happens when you deliberately push your body to the very edge of crisis, forcing it into a controlled simulation of life or death. The mechanism for this? Freezing water. Imagine standing right on the edge of the water. It's 38 degrees Fahrenheit. You step in. The reality of that cold is visceral, and the biological response is absolutely instantaneous. This isn't just a gentle nudge to your nervous system. It's a full system activation, a violent, terrifying physiological crisis. Your skin temperature plummets, your breath catches in your throat, and for the next 3 minutes, your body experiences a complete system override, entirely convinced that it is dying. Part 1. The cold shock response. Let's break down the exact biological panic that happens the second that water hits your skin. 0 seconds. Thermal shock. The receptors in your skin literally scream in panic, firing rapid, intense pain signals straight to the hypothalamus. By 15 seconds, your brain enters total survival mode. It triggers profound, painful vasoconstriction, violently shunting blood away from your arms and legs just to protect your core organs. And by 30 seconds, autonomic panic. Your blood pressure spikes violently, your heart races, you are gasping, fighting for air. What follows right after that is a staggering neurochemical flood. As your sympathetic nervous system engages its fight-or-flight sequence, your brain releases a massive 530% surge in norepinephrine. 530%. That's not just a subtle chemical shift. It is a blaring evolutionary alarm bell, ringing through every single cell, demanding immediate survival. Part 2. The endotoxin mystery. For decades, medical textbooks told us a simple truth. The autonomic nervous system and the innate immune system were strictly involuntary. You simply cannot think away an infection. But researchers at Radboud University decided to put this absolute rule to the test. They injected a man named Wim Hof with a bacterial endotoxin, basically a dead bacteria specifically designed to trigger a severe flu-like inflammatory response. It posed a clinical impossibility. Could a human being consciously command their immune system to just ignore it? The comparison between the two groups in this study is totally mind-bending. The control group experienced exactly what you'd expect from a severe bacterial injection: sudden fever, violent chills, just a massive immune freakout. But the trained subjects, the ones armed with just 10 days of extreme cold exposure and breath work, they showed almost no symptoms at all. They suppressed their innate immune system on command. The clinical results were undeniable. This controlled, deliberate stress triggered a massive 50% reduction in pro-inflammatory markers, while at the exact same time drastically spiking their anti-inflammatory proteins. The autonomic system had been successfully hijacked. They proved, on paper, that acute, deliberate stress could forcefully command the body's internal defensive army. Part 3. Modulating the immune system. So what's actually happening here? It brings us to a really fascinating biological concept called hormesis. Basically, what doesn't kill you biologically makes you much stronger. By simulating a literal life-or-death scenario in the ice, you force the body into a rapid adaptation phase. That initial spike of immense stress and inflammation teaches your body how to regulate itself. Over time, your baseline inflammation actually plummets. You are building an internal armor against future physiological attacks. And this brilliant stat illustrates the victory over human frailty perfectly. A massive 2016 study, published in PLOS One, followed over 3,000 participants. The result of the study? A 29% reduction in self-reported sick days from work. And here is the kicker. This wasn't from swimming in frozen, icy lakes for hours. This profound shift was achieved simply by ending a normal daily shower with just 30 seconds of cold water. The blood work from these studies reveals a stunning internal upgrade. Regular cold exposure triggers a progressive surge in circulating immunoglobulins. That's your body's primary frontline defense against respiratory pathogens. It sparks very distinct spikes in immune-regulating cytokines and lymphocytes. The cold is literally priming your white blood cells, leaving them on high alert, ready to hunt down and destroy viruses. Part 4. Rewiring the brain. The physical immunity upgrades are incredible, but the psychological win is where things get truly compounding. When you step into that freezing cold, your brain is flooded with dopamine, a 250% increase that sustains itself for hours. And this isn't some cheap synthetic dopamine hit from scrolling on your phone. This is earned by surviving the hardest, most terrifying thing you will do all day before you've even had breakfast. You forge an unbreakable mental resilience. It fundamentally shifts your baseline identity. Deep inside the brain is a small area called the periaqueductal gray, or the PAG. Functional MRI scans of people actively practicing cold exposure show robust, intense activation right in this exact region. The PAG regulates pain suppression and fear. So, by repeatedly confronting the sheer panic of the cold water, you are quite literally rewiring the neurological hardware that dictates how you perceive stress and anxiety in the real world. You are teaching your brain to stay perfectly calm inside the storm. Part 5. The lethal risks. Now we have to pivot sharply into the darkness, because this powerful biological tool can easily turn into a fatal event. There's a terrifying physiological phenomenon known as autonomic conflict. When you jump into freezing water, the cold shock aggressively accelerates your heart rate. But if you dunk your face under, the mammalian dive reflex kicks in, which forcefully tries to slam the brakes and slow your heart down. Your nervous system is suddenly being ripped in two completely opposite directions at the exact same millisecond. This massive cardiac confusion can trigger deadly, malignant arrhythmias. For a vulnerable cardiovascular system, this is catastrophic. If someone has coronary artery disease, the heart's sudden demand for oxygen violently spikes, while the extreme cold simultaneously crushes the blood vessels closed. That leads directly to ischemia, or a full-blown heart attack. For those with hypertension, the sudden extreme spike in blood pressure can instantly rupture a weakened vessel. The outcome? A stroke. Just let this quote sink in for a second. Sudden cardiac death risk increases 30%, attributed to cold exposure effects on compromised hearts. That is the ultimate cost here. That is the very real danger of attempting to hack your biology without understanding your underlying health status. The cold does not care about your willpower. It doesn't care how tough you are. If your heart lacks the reserve to handle the shock, the entire system will crash. Part 6. The clinical protocol. So let's bring the tension down and look at the exact clinical blueprints for surviving this and actually optimizing your body safely. You do not need to plunge into literal ice. Start at a chilly 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Limit your initial exposure to just 30 to 60 seconds. The clinical sweet spot for all these benefits, target just 11 total minutes per week, broken up into a few different sessions. Going colder or staying in longer actually doesn't yield better physiological results. It only spikes your risk of hypothermia. And critically, rewarm gradually. Let your own body do the metabolic work. Now, for the athletes out there, timing is the difference between total optimization and absolute sabotage. If you are lifting weights for muscle hypertrophy, avoid the cold plunge for at least 4 hours afterward. The cold forcefully blunts the mTOR growth pathway, stopping your muscle protein synthesis dead in its tracks. But if you just finished a grueling long-distance endurance run, submerging right away is excellent. It rapidly constricts those vessels to flush out all that metabolic waste. The cold can either save your joints or completely erase your hard-earned gains. We've explored the breathtaking highs of immune modulation, and we've stared down the fatal depths of cardiovascular collapse. This freezing water is essentially a brutal mirror held up directly to your physiology. It offers an immediate, unforgiving test of your biological resilience. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final lingering thought. When the shock hits and the crisis begins, will your system fail or will it adapt?